Thank you. I've been very nervous about this conference. This is a sobering place to stand. The conference title exposes all my shadows. A poet manqué, an old lover, and what's that worth? And a defrocked lunatic. That is, an analyst. I feel myself bottoming out and identified with the ass on the poster, if anything. Anyway, this ice and these falls and this whole scene is a lunatic place for a midsummer's night's dream. And it's hard to talk in this company because I'm so often grouped with jerks. I mean, the therapy trade and alternative consciousness scene and academics or straight Jungians, straight. And I feel humbled to share words with you, Charles Bohr, and David Miller, and Thomas Sass, and Rafael Lopez, and Robert Creeley, and William Shakespeare. Friends, let us be gentle to one another, and take me as one, in the words of Robert Creeley in his poem Waiting, who pushes behind the words which awkward catch and turn him to a disturbed and fumbling man. Now, I'm going to begin this morning neither as a lunatic, nor a poet, nor a lover, by trying to tell you clearly and rationally what I shall be about during the next 2 hours. A first part with a break and a second part. The first basic idea comes from Hegel, who supposedly said in a lecture, in insanity, quote, in insanity the soul strives to restore itself to perfect inner harmony. For Hegel, insanity is a necessary stage or form of the soul. It is a stage upon which the soul must perform. Insanity is essential to soul-making. That's the first basic idea. And the second basic idea comes from alchemy. In alchemical soul-making, gold is necessarily preceded by silver, which means that gold comes out of silver, the red comes out of the white, sun from moon, brighter awareness from lunacy. Alchemical soul-making, in fact, proposes the final idea of sun conjuncted with moon means nothing less than a condition of being in which solar consciousness and moon madness are marvelously conjoined. The mysterium conjunctionis is illumined lunacy. Let us put the Hegelian and the alchemical propositions together, but not too quickly, especially not before we've examined some of what is implied by these alchemical words, silver, luna, whitening. This albedo aspect, whitening aspect of alchemy, has been remarkably neglected in our solar fever and gold rush. Any usual description of alchemy will tell you that it is an art of gold making, and that the alchemist's aim was to transform, by means of devotion, wizardry, and techniques, base metals into noble gold. And though these same accounts all agree that silver is the penultimate major phase, and in fact gold's very partner, there is extraordinarily little written about silver. This lacuna about silver, not loud enough? Okay. This lacuna about silver may of course be attributed to a masculine bias throughout alchemy and the repression of what we so neatly and monotheistically call the feminine. Since silver in general symbolism carries often a female sign, but not by all means always. I do not think this feminist explanation is a satisfactory one for the silver lacuna. I think the lacuna has something archetypally to do with silver, luna, and whiteness itself. Now, I need make no disclaimers in this ballpark concerning the value of alchemy for psychology. I'm assuming, we can already start in the fifth inning. The warm-ups have been accomplished by Jung earlier in the century. But maybe I do need to emphasize the relevance of alchemy for psychopathology, pathology. For after all, alchemy is a prolonged witness to madmen at work upon themselves. So I shall try to bring out the pathological twist, and I ask you to listen with a pathological ear as we go along. Now, what about the silver? This is what the alchemists say of the silver. Silver is a metal of the moon, the lunar metal, the seed of the moon and the earth. Other such seeds, for instance, are copper as a seed of Venus or lead as the seed of Saturn. Now, this idea of seeds means that there's a psychic moisture coagulated in the earth, these moist vapors, that is, psychic fantasies within the deeper structure of the person, fantasies in the body. Seeds here mean the living natural force, the archetypal principles, these intentionalities, their capacity to move, form, have a history, make effects, influence, that they leaf and flower and have ramifications. And the theory of the planets as metallic seeds in the earth goes back to Babylon and Sumer. Now that the planets, or spirits, are in the earth as metals, of course reminds us that the gods are within the world, buried in the depths. We need but search them out and give them air and fire, says Paracelsus, for example. And in fact, that is precisely what the word metal means. Homer uses the word metallao, which is translated as to search. Metallea, search for metals, metallon, a mine, a quarry, a place of searching. The idea of planet as metal makes us search. There is a searching impulse to dig deeper, to go after the hidden. As Pliny says, whenever one vein is found, another is not far to seek. So that one is forced by the notion of metal to go on deeper, further, never stopping. There's always another vein to explore. And then the bringing up and out in the word itself, in metal itself. It is similar in significance to prospector, the prospective view of the psyche which Jung had, going on further, seeking, looking, mining further veins. Now, another characteristic of silver is that it is always white. All the roots of the word silver, argentum, sarpu, raj, mean white, bright, brilliant, gleaming, shining. The Egyptian word for silver was white. The kesef, the Hebrew word for silver, shining, white, metal. Hence this equation that we find all through alchemy of silver, white, and moon. Whitening or silvering as an aging process, that is, whitening of the hair, or as a digesting or bathing or dipping process which makes things whiter. Now, the earth of the moon, the moon's body, is air. It has been permeated through and through by ether, says Plutarch. Now this is important, for the moon is considered a fertile place in alchemy, as is the air. Now whereas modern psychology imagines the earth, this earth, to be fertile in a Demetrian fantasy, and the principle of growth, for Paracelsus, air is the nourishing principle, and earth is the principle of non-growth, the principle that limits. So that air, or to be only airy, fairy, and light, and so on and so forth, from an alchemical point of view, is exactly where growth takes place, through air, through moon. Hence, luna, moon, silver, is a kind of air, a subtle air body that nourishes our imagination, our fantasy. One imagines it as non-tangible, glistening, silvering, whitened air reflective, receptive kind of consciousness. The very poem of Pound that you read, that cup, that whiteness. A hard, bright, cool mind, astringent, desiccating, says Ruland in his dictionary. Now, when silver is compared with the other metals, for example, when it's compared with gold, it's considered harder than gold. It is valuable, it is precious, it is desirable, used for beauty and jewelry, but it is harder than gold. There is a stiffness in silver that is not in gold. When it's compared with copper, it is conductive of heat and electricity, communication, but it is not red. So it is a cool white conductor, not a red hot one. Then, when it's compared with tin and lead, it is said to be useful. It is gray or white, but it has luster and shine. That is, it ennobles the useful, shines it, takes on polish. Silver is like mercury in its appearance, but it is coagulated. That is, the silver does not flow. It's set, fixed, stable, not scatterable, fragmentary. It is self-consistent. Some of the qualities of silver. Silver has a frigid and humid body, says one text. Silver is hard and dry, cleansed both of oily, greasy sulfur and phlegmatic, vicious moistures, says Albertus Magnus. Silver rings. Plastic doesn't ring. Doesn't ring. There's no silver here. We'll have to imagine that ring. It resonates when struck. All its moisture, its sulfur and quicksilver have been well digested. So it's not dense, mushy, lumpy, sticky. That's not silver. Lumpy, mushy, sticky, flowy. Silver does not burn other things. It's cold. Silver is best for sticking molten metals together. That is, it works as a mediator, a bridge. It is both attached and detached. Silver toughens gold. Gold, they say, cannot be drawn out into thin strands, worked finely, unless silver is alloyed with it. Because gold alone cannot bear the blows of the hammer, whereas with silver, a toughening takes place. Silver mirrors. Albertus Magnus says this about mirrors. A mirror is caused by moisture, receptive. It receives because moisture receives, which is solidified and is capable of taking a good polish. That is, the moisture gets solidified and is capable of taking a good polish. And it receives images because it is moist, and holds them because it is solid or limited. Holds the images because it is solid or limited. Terminatum is the Latin word. That is, the moisture is limited by a boundary. This is from Albertus Magnus. Then it goes on to explain that air cannot mirror because it is unlimited, no focus in place or shape. Air is a medium through which images pass, but can't itself retain them or reproduce them. And it even says further that still in another place, in the Golden Casket, it says that mercury, a very basic principle of the alchemical work, can't be activated or can be activated only by the white ferment of silver. There is a need for intense psychic, mental, imaginative work, ferment of silver, to activate the psychic process, Mercury. The moon is also considered the recipient of all planetary influences, in Paracelsus, for example. Just as white is the color that contains all other colors, or white light is broken into all other colors, so the moon contains all the planetary influences. So silver subsumes all the other metals within it. So the idea here is that we have to start with the moon in order to get to the other planets, or end with the moon as the digestion of the other planets. That is, the moon is the polytheistic focal place where all the other influences meet. Now this place which is whitened and all the others are there is a kind of purified psychic place which is, let's say, psychic reality or pure psychic reality, hard, inflammable, constant. And when the moon is too close, as in a poem by Robert Duncan, that's madness. That is, when the moon is too close, when one is at one with the moon, literally there, taken monotheistically, forgetting the fact that the moon reflects at least 7 planets, then one has monotheistically identified with the moon's own place. That's supposedly the moon being too close and madness. Now that was a very quick resume of a bunch of alchemical passages. And now we're going to move into mining silver. I wanted to do those passages so that you got a certain idea of what words the alchemists used themselves about silver, luna, and moon. Now we're going to talk about the mining of silver. Where is our silver to be found? How do we uncover it? Alchemy always explains where you get the stuff you work with. We may find the substances that we need by going to the right places for them. Sulfur, for instance, says the English Benedictine Kramer, is found in all things in the world: metals, herbs, trees, animals, stones. These are its ore. Sulfur can be got from whatever comes up, whatever catches our attention, blazes from the natural world. Sulfur is mined from our worldliness. It's mined from any compulsion, fascination, attraction in the macrocosm. When you catch fire, you're in touch with sulfur. You're mining a bit of sulfur. So salt, another essential component of the alchemical work of soul making, salt is mined from our internal microcosmic world, that is, from our subjectivity, from tears, sweat, blood, urine. And our experienced life is where we discover our salt, refers us back to its source in experiences and the residues of these experiences. Now, as our tears and sweat are places for mining salt, and as our compulsions and desires are places where we can mine sulfur, so there must be places for mining silver. The mining of the metals is first of all a metaphorical operation. Bernardus Vigilius says, "My son, understand here the luna metaphorica, not the literal." That's an alchemical statement, which I'm sure Tom Sauce appreciates. And the author of An Open Entrance writes, "You must understand that I have spoken metaphorically. If you take my words in the literal sense, you will reap no harvest except in the outlay. So we must discover psychological, not literal modes of silver mining it from conditions of the psyche in which silver is buried." Antiquity, that is Lucretius, Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, considered silver to result from a forest fire, a holocaust. A gigantic fire rages through a forest, charring the greenwood, decimating nature, and after that ruin, a thin stream of silver emerges. Silver comes out of the gigantic burnouts. Silver emerges out of what is the ruin of the forest and forest consciousness, the wooden state, hyle, the material world. And when that's burnt out, silver emerges. That was one of the first modes of mining silver. The second and most usual discussions of silver mining in medieval and Renaissance alchemy refer to it together with lead. As the two planets, Moon and Saturn, are often linked, for example, as beginning and end, or as both cold and to do with death, so, as one historian of alchemy says, the history of silver mining is inseparably bound with that of lead. By the way, an excellent work on metallurgy of the Renaissance, and I'm referring now to the Renaissance, is Agricola on metals. Agricola was a German born in Saxony in 1494, and this book, Agricola on Metals, is available in an English translation by a young mining engineer and his wife at Stanford, a man named Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover and his wife, when at Stanford, translated one of the classical texts of alchemy. Tom Sass can do something with that, I'm sure. Now this union, this finding of silver in lead releases a white dove. You find these pictures in Jung's Psychology and Alchemy. That is, a soul emerges from a leaden state. Whiteness is found in the lead, sometimes as a dove, sometimes as magnesia or silver. The lead's dull, heavy heart, in it there is a white bird of silver. Now lead, this metal of Saturn, cold, heavy, dense, dull, senex, was not used the leaden echo, was not used widely before Roman times. Like silver, it was not technically useful as iron and copper were, so that both lead and silver, like Saturn and Moon, were more otherworldly, religious, and mystical than the worldly planets and metals of Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, that is, iron, copper, and tin. Now the Romans, as they did so many other things, of course found usefulness out of lead, and they turned it into plumbing. They took the religious, mystical sense of Saturn and they made dishes for sugar and pipes and so on. But the connection here with silver continues. Vincent of Beauvais in the Middle Ages considered lead to be fallen silver. That it isn't that silver comes out of lead, it is that silver is the original condition, and lead is when silver gets debased. Silver that's fallen or aged or lost its vitality becomes lead. So there's an implication here that these leaden states that we get into are fallen, lost psychic reflections. Debased silver. Silver that has become coagulated and dulled so that we no longer see that it is a psychic place. And instead we only see the lead. So that Vincent of Beauvai's thought here is that it reminds you that every time there's a leaden condition, this is really a debased silver. When lead ore was smelted, silver could be extracted from it, leaving a new lump, a new prima materia, a heavier, darker lead called plumbago, or litharge, a yellow oxide of lead, or lead as graphite, which we use in our pencils. So our lead pencils, there is no silver in those pencils. And the effort of writing a word is an alchemical act of getting silver out of lead. In terms of our metaphorical mining, though we may extract a silver moment from leaden ore, these extractions of silver leave behind an even heavier, denser condition, and that must be familiar to you. Depression is the price of silver. Silver doesn't come by itself. It comes with lead. Melancholy as the disease of thinkers, all the way back to Aristotle and through Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. A common experience, an insight may be beautiful in itself as silver, but it may make no dent on the burdened mood from which it comes. This gives the depressed feeling of lead poisoning, a state of being swallowed by lead, lost in the lead mine. It's all so long, so slow, so heavy. For what use do we feel these silver mirrorings? What the hell's the use of this thought, this poem, this insight, if it doesn't illumine the leaden condition itself? The depression doesn't lift. But the truth is that the depression is the mine, the lead necessary for the silver, though the silver is neither useful nor functional in changing the lead. We mine silver from lead not to do away with the lead, for that would be to close down the mine. Now here we have to remember a curious metallurgic fact, that silver corrupts in the air. It tarnishes. When silver is exposed, there, visible, presented, it blackens. And it converts in nature with the chlorides in rainwater so that it can really mainly be found in conjunction with lead. Only very rarely can it be discovered under the earth in mountainous regions. In fact, Albertus Magnus says silver is protected by lead. It requires, to keep silver in the air, out, open, it requires rubbing, polishing, attention, wiping, fussing, worrying. It calls for worry, so that our worry, those constant little worries, are polishing modes of keeping the silver reflectable, able to reflect. So if exposure makes it lose its shine, it is probably best hidden. Hence the entire hiddenness of silver all the way through alchemy. And maybe that's why we can't find it except where it is covered with various kinds of blackness, silence, dullness, depression. But wherever these are, there is also a mirroring possibility. Now, the third place where we can mine silver, besides from the ruin of our raging and the leaden despair, is from the brain. Quite a group of tracts, including some by Paracelsus, place the moon, or the metal silver, with the brain. The brain is the silver organ as the heart is gold. I mean, we say he's got a heart of gold, but you rarely hear someone say he's got a silver brain. It's hidden. It's hidden. It's hidden in the brain. By brain here, of course, I mean the metaphorical brain, the subtle brain, or the brain of the fantasy body. That is, fantasies themselves, whatever their nature, contain silver. This silvered brain presents itself in descriptions of silvery forms. Let me show you what I mean. This is a tract explaining various phases of the alchemical work. And it says, the reign of the moon, that's when the moon reigns, not reigns this way, but R-E-I-G-N, the regnum of the moon, lasts just 3 weeks. But before its close, the substance exhibits a great variety of forms. It will become liquid and again coagulate 100 times a day. 100 times a day the thing comes up, goes back, comes out, new thought, a new pattern, a new insight. 100 times a day it dissolves and comes up again and dissolves. Sometimes it will present the appearance of fish's eyes, and then again of tiny silver trees with twigs and leaves. Whenever you look at it, you will have cause for astonishment, particularly when you see it all divided into beautiful but very minute grains of silver. Those little tiny flashes, hunches, moments of brightness is ways that silver appears. These silver patterns, these variegated silver filigrees, are ways we find silver in the bits and grains and sparkles of reflection, dream fragments, images, little fantasies, tufts of ideas, 100 times a day, interlaced connections, aha, aha, those ahas and all that goes on as we talk to ourselves when little bits of silver come up. The whitening of the mind emerging in its night. Ruland writes in his dictionary, now hear this fantasy. This is in an alchemical dictionary from about 1616, I think. Silver is found in conglomerated masses looking something like buds distributed in the branches of a tree. At other times it assumes the shape of little sticks or other similar figures. Agricola testifies that he has seen perfect specimens of metallic instruments, such as shovels and small hammers taken from the ore. I myself have beheld natural figures or images of small fish, lions, wolves, etc. Now you see what's being said here is that silver, the way it comes, they say, in nature, is in shaped imagistic forms. Agricola, who's a metallurgist, of course finds reflection, finds silver in shovels and hammers. That's how it comes. He sees it. He sees these bits in the shapes and the images of shovels and hammers. The Ruland sees it in the shapes of small fish, lions, wolves. Seeing things is a silver mine. It comes in the shape of fantasy. It can be mined from our brain's interests, our projected figurations. Mohammed also finds silver the metal of images. Amulets in the Muslim faith were forbidden to be made of any metal but silver. Silver is the fitting metal of imaging. Hence, imaging is one of the ways we find silver, and one of the ways we whiten the brain. A fourth mode of mining silver is from the money complex. Since Roman times, silver has been the metal of money, so that the word itself, argent, is synonymous and generic for money. The curious alchemical relation of silver and gold, their pairing, repeats in money, for the value of silver is tied intimately with the value of gold, as you know. During classical times and Pericles' times, the relationship was 10 to 1, and that was sort of the basic idea, was supposed to last through centuries, that the relation between silver and gold in value was one equal weight of gold equal 10 in silver. And still today, though silver is economically more valuable than gold, more economically valuable than gold because it's consumed faster than produced and industrially far more necessary, it fluctuates. These are the kinds of things we know about in Switzerland. It fluctuates more in relation with the gold price than on its own worth. The debasement of the value of silver is not, the value of silver is not free of gold. This is a psychological fact. It is not tied with industrial value. Or let's say not completely. The debasement of the value of silver in relation to gold during the 3rd century has been considered a symptom, if not a contributing cause, to the decline and fall of Rome. At the very end of the empire, around 400 to 425, the ratio dropped radically down to 1 to 18 in just a quarter of a century. But the total collapse of the values of silver came during the heydays of our Western materialism. That is 1870 to 1930, J.P. Morgan's time, which cannot all be accounted for in terms of new mines and mining methods. Mining silver from the money complex is exceedingly difficult, as I have learned from that old prospector from Latin America, Senor Lopez. The value of silver decreases historically the more material the culture in which it is used as money. As values become material, the more silver it takes to assert a value. The more silver, now take that silver metaphorically there, the more silver it takes to assert a value. Hence, the more materialized a person's values, the less silver is to be found. As money becomes purely an item of exchange without value itself, money itself is just paper printed, the values it represents are external to the money, what you can buy for it. And analysts go on debasing silver in this fashion by saying money in dreams means energy. This gives a purely functional, utilitarian view to money. And so no silver can be mined from it. No reflection, only power, exchange value, what you get for it, quantity. This is the materialism of analytical interpretations of money. It's only good for exchange, so it's what you can get for it, that is, get rid of it, spend it, inflation. That's why, as Lopez points out, it's so important to be stolen from in dreams. This is in contrast to Greek silver coinage. Coinage was invented in Asia Minor. It was the Greeks who replaced utilitarian money, tool money, cakes, bars, spits of metal, with the marvelously crafted coins of silver showing the heads and animals of gods. As a couple who do coin history of money and coins write, Greek coins were at one and the same time a true mirror of Greek religion, Greek history and economics, as well as Greek love of beauty. A Greek coin was an aesthetic joy, a standard of value, and a tribute to the gods of the place depicted on them. There was no Roman distinction between the realms of Caesar and the gods. Silver was the place of this valorization by the gods of commerce and finance. Money has since lost its silver. It is no longer an instrument of reflection, but instead has become the bottom line of anti-reflection. The excuse we give whenever we don't wish to go further with any kind of depth is that it costs too much. What we mean by being realistic is money. Really real reality has become the bottom line, money. That's where things are real. That's where psyche stops. So that the ultimate literalism in the culture is the economic fallacy. And that's where the most